So we have removed the frets from this classical. This happens to be a Spana. It's a guitar made by Dean, and it's actually a pretty decent solid Caesar top classical. It's a cutaway. But I have a lot of these, actually, and so I thought it would be cool to have a fretless. And so I bought some round wound strings and some refinishing equipment. I'm going to do cyanoacrylate or basically a crazy glue finish, and I removed the frets and filled them in with a thick paper, about a 1 millimeter thick paper in the slot, and glued those in with cyanoacrylate crazy glue, and then now I'm filing them down. And it's really a fun project. I didn't want to spend a lot of money for a fretless because I realized that they are very difficult to play. I played violin for many years when I was in university, and I know a fretless instrument is completely different than a fretted guitar. So we'll see how this goes. So to remove the paper, we use a small file or a small chisel, wood chisel. You can also use something like a knife, and work with it that way. And I did remove some of the paper that way. And then filing it down, filing them smooth. You want to file it until you start hitting the, this is painter's tape. The board is all taped off. Frets are removed. Actually, the tape is laid down first, and the frets are removed with a fret pulling pliers, wherever that might be at the moment. It's very similar to a wire, like a wire cutter, except it's flat, and you get it underneath the fret, and then you lift it up. And then this cardboard here is to protect the instrument, of course. And then we will use other file, and a block with sandpaper, which I'll probably be showing you later on, to really level the fretboard. And this fretboard is adjustable. You can see that there's an adjustment inside, which is very important. I wouldn't suggest that you remove the frets and try to make a guitar fretless without the truss rod being within the neck. Otherwise, it's not adjustable. You want to have an adjustable neck. And many classicals don't. They don't have even high-end classicals do not have a truss rod, and it's more common these days. But many of the older high-end classical guitars, you won't find that. Okay, moving along here. I purchased something I picked up a while back, and this is kind of a luthier's tool trick. This came from Harbor Freights, and it's used for car repair. It's 17 inches long, so it's actually perfect to leveling a guitar neck. Now, when we're making a fretless guitar, the neck has to be very, very straight. And with this leveling tool and the sandpaper that comes along with it, I think it's three and a quarter, or about 3 1/4 inch wide. You're able to really get it very, very straight. So I'm leveling this out. You can see the fret markers. They're no longer frets, but I'm getting up there in age where I wear reading glasses, and when I'm playing at night or in a darker room, or even at outside at night, which I often do with different lights and stuff, it would be very difficult for me to see the side fret markers, let alone if there was no frets at all. Like most fretless guitars that you purchase wouldn't have the markers. So I purposely made the markers a lot lighter so that I would know where to, place my fingers directly on the marker rather than, in between. If it's a fretted instrument. So, purposely made the frets lighter. It's completely smooth. I'm going to still work on it a little bit. I can feel a little unevenness in here, and then down here, this is where the tongue is. I'm going to widen this out a little bit. This is referred to as the tongue, and this is generally takes a little swoop in, and it certainly does on this guitar. So you can see that this is not sanding out as well as it did here. So I have to use the same tool and apply a little bit more pressure coming down here, and because I certainly don't want this higher, and it doesn't hurt to have these last few frets a little bit lower so that to absolutely eliminate any kind of fret buzz at all, or a fretboard buzz. So we're going after that wah kind of sound, on a fretless instrument using round wound strings. And so a little bit more leveling with that, and then we're going to stain it and then go from there. So still sanding here, and the key is to make sure that it is super, super level. And what I'm using here is you can use a steel ruler, as long as it's really, really straight. Ultimately, this is a guitar fret rule that we use for refretting a guitar, and you can see that when I put this on there's still a little bit of wobble. So it's hitting up here, and it's hitting where the guitar meets the body, which is very common. And then in the middle there, we want that to be closer so it doesn't sway like that when the ruler's up and down. And that's the best way to check. You can also look at it and see a little bit of light coming through there, but still, this is a dead giveaway that there's still a little ways to go, because once the string tension is on, it will swoop. And we don't want that. There's going to be some of that, but to make this neck as straight as possible, or the fretboard as straight as possible, is really the key. So we continue to sand. So we've seemed to have finished the sanding process here. When I lay the straight edge on the neck, it seems to be level throughout, except for a little bit of a dip on the tongue here, which is to be expected, which is fine. But we're more concerned about the middle of the neck, the playability area, and it seems to be as straight as we can possibly get it. So I'm holding the camera with one hand and trying to show you with the other one, but I can tell by the way I move the straight edge that it is catching all the way across the fretboard, just by the way it rubs against the wood. So it seems to be in pretty good shape. And very important that the truss rod is not all the way tight, and actually not even all the way loose, so that there's some playability. So playability, what I mean by that, we can adjust the neck when the string tension is on, because there is a little more than 100 pounds of pressure on the neck with the strings, depending on the tuning that you use. And so the neck does react, and you want to be able to tighten it up to bring the neck back just like it is now. So if I put strings on there here now, and the neck did not move, and that can happen, but not likely, but it could happen. Once I put the nut on, which has been taken down, and the bridge, which has been also taken down, put the strings on, and if the neck didn't move, it would play perfectly because it's perfectly flat. But that's not going to happen. Generally, it doesn't happen. There's, the neck will be brought up a little bit. And every guitar is different, so we want to be able to adjust it with the truss rod a little bit when we put the strings on. I hope that's easy to understand. So we clean it up. I keep a vacuum handy. My shop is indoors. It's actually in my home here. It's kind of a mess right now, but this is the area that I work on these, and it seems to work really well. But I do keep a vacuum close by, and we keep the dust to a minimum. And then, so what I'm going to do is take care of the fretboard here, and then I'll show you some details on how that's done. So I got the neck nice and straight, and I'm stringing it up, and because we want to make darn sure that it is exactly the way we want it before we start refinishing it. Because if we refinish it and then we decide that we want to do some more straightening, some more sanding, then we have a problem. One quick note: with a fretless guitar, it's very important to use flat wound strings, and some of the best strings that I've found for this purpose is the Labella 500p professional. They call them professional recording strings because they don't squeak when you play. They're smooth, and you can. One thing a person has a tendency to do on a fretless is to do a lot of sliding and to take advantage of that. And then also even a little bit of a vibrato, so you don't want the round wound getting in the way. You want to use flat wound. Okay, so we're stringing it up, and then we'll see how it plays. So we got the strings on, and everything seems pretty good. This is not how you normally play a fretless guitar, but it's a good way to check it out. Is just slide and hit every note. I ran into one area here where it's not real clear, and I thought it might have been, of course, the fretboard isn't level. But after looking at the string very carefully, the string at one time must have been bent or something, so that actually the string is not straight. This is something I've never run into before, where it's a faulty string. Right now, the strings are tune. They're pretty slack because I use I generally play in dadgad with a capo on the second fret, which means that I tune it I tune it a step lower. So the low string, instead of being an E, is actually tuned to C, which is 2 steps slower. And so it is quite a bit looser than a regular string, and there is some chance that there could be some buzzing going on. There isn't, but with that string not being perfect, absolutely perfect, there is. I can find a little bit of buzzing if I try. Otherwise, what would normally be the A string is perfect. And it's worth mentioning that the fretboard isn't finished yet. This is just raw wood, and it's not going to get that crystal clear sound until we finish it. You'll hear the difference when it's done. It'll be more like glass. The CA glue, the cyanoacrylate, crazy glue, super glue, whatever we want to call it. We put a very fine, thin coat on first, and it soaks in. We harden that, and then we put on 5 coats of medium, and then we start sanding it, and to make sure that everything is completely smooth. If it isn't smooth, we apply another coat, and we do that until it's actually as smooth as can be. We just test it out by running sandpaper with a block over it to make sure how it looks, and then we polish it up with 2 different grades of polish. And I'll show you all this in a moment. It's out of tune. So I have gone through the steps of applying the different degrees of super glue, the adhesive, and this comes from a company called Stickfast, and I believe you can order it on Amazon. I'm not sure if that's what I did with this or not, but I believe they do sell their product on Amazon. And there's an accelerator, a couple of different polishes, and the super glue. And I primarily just stick with the very thin super glue. The thick, or the little, what they call medium super glue, is just a little bit too heavy for our purpose. And what I do is do about 5 coats with the thin super glue, and the neck comes out real well. This is just with the first polishing that I did. You can see that it's quite shiny. There's a little bit of a grain to it, and I'm going to now do the second coat of polish, and then we'll be ready to go to put the strings back on. It's hard. It's soaked. The cyanoacrylate has soaked in. It's very, very hard finish, very smooth. And a couple of things. So I apply the polish with a Q-tip, and then let it dry just a little bit, and then I work it in with a cloth, with the clean cloth. One thing that you're probably noticing that I had put the strings on in order to test the guitar, and what I do is I take strips of wax paper. I go into the kitchen and take Terry's wax. Terry is my wife. I take the wax paper, and then I wrap the strings in wax paper just to keep them clean, because that's the fastest way to go through a set of strings is to get them dirty before you even get a chance to use them. So I wrap them up with wax paper and then put them off to the side. I use little electrical conduit to bring it off to the side, and then, but they're still wrapped up. You can still see that they're wrapped up around the pegs. So once I'm done with this, I'm going to probably touch up the nut a little bit more. I notice that it's a little bit high, so I'll bring that down the nut just a little bit, and then it should be good. So we got it going, and I've been playing it for a couple of hours, I guess, and the only problem that I ran into was the bad string, the bad E string. In this case, it's a D string. So the way I play guitar, I should explain this. I use a capo pretty exclusively. I tune my guitar, as I mentioned before, I use a DAD-GAD tuning, and so I tune my guitar to low C. So it's if I can get this right, C, G, C, F, G, C. And then I bring it up, I put a capo on the second fret. That brings it up to DAD-GAD, D-A-D, G-A-D. And that's a common, like a fingerstyle or open tuning. It does it gives you a suspended second D chord as an open. And if I put my finger on the second fret, we have a regular D chord. But the advantage to doing that with a fretless guitar is that with the use of the capo, you can move, this is essentially the nut. So I can put this anywhere I want and it'll act as the nut, right? So rather than, if I'm not using the capo, I would have to place my fingers directly on the fret marker, or where the fret used to be. And so the transition from a fretless guitar to a regular guitar is a little bit mind-boggling, or it could be, you know. So I've eliminated that by placing the capo on the second fret. And then I can place my fingers exactly where I would if there were frets. So the transition is much easier from going from a fretless guitar to a fretted instrument. So of course, it's obvious that the sliding, kind of getting that slide guitar sound, without using a bar, is a kind of a desirable thing. But also to a little out of tune there, so I do have to practice with this a little bit. But to slide individual notes, Here's my problem area. So single notes are pretty easy, but chords are a little bit tougher. You have to kind of work with them a little bit. So you can slide from one chord to the other if you choose to do so, or take the whole group, the whole chord, and move it up. You know, octaves are. And so we have a fretless guitar. Once you start fooling around with one of these, it's like a different instrument. I play solo, and then I use my Godin, another nylon string classical guitar, but it's synthesized. With a bunch of effects on it, and then I also use the fretless for a few choice songs. But just a little bit of a warning: like if you take a standard tune and try to play it on fretless, you have to be really, really precise and careful, because otherwise it can sound a little bit cheesy. Like the ear's not used to hearing that. So have fun. If you're interested in or need any help in modifying your guitar, I do accept a few instruments, to do here. We could talk about it. You can find more information or get in touch with me through my website, shanewilson.org, shanewilson.org, and then just send me a little message, or you can, leave a comment below and let me know what you think about this fretless guitar business. All right? All right.